The real reason Yoda's species is so powerful isn't just their strength in the Force. It's something far more mysterious. Throughout thousands of years in galactic history, across countless wars, betrayals, and temptations, every known member of their species has remained loyal to the light side. Humans produced both Luke Skywalker and Emperor Palpatine. Zabraks gave the galaxy Jedi Masters and Darth Maul. Twi'leks became Jedi Knights and Sith Assassins. Every other Force-sensitive species spawned both heroes and villains, except one. This pattern becomes impossible to ignore when you examine the evidence. In canon, only 3 members are known: Yoda, Yaddle, and Grogu. All 3 serve the light side. In Legends, 3 more appear over a millennium: Vandar, Master Oteg, and Mimch. 6 distinct individuals spanning thousands of years. Not one has been shown turning to the dark side in any official story. So why has this species never produced a Sith Lord? The answer lies in examining each member's story. Let's start with the most famous, Yoda himself. Canon describes him as small, just 0.66 meters tall, with green skin and large pointed ears. Yet it also describes him as stronger than most Jedi in his connection with the Force. For over 800 years, he trained Jedi at the Coruscant Temple, shaping the Order's philosophy and preparing thousands of students. Yoda faced temptations that would have broken almost any other Jedi. He watched the Republic crumble into corruption. He saw political leaders ignore warnings about threats. Even the Jedi Master experienced the pain of betrayal when his own Padawan, Count Dooku, became Darth Tyrannus and helped orchestrate the Clone Wars. The weight of these failures should have crushed him. Most Jedi who lose even one student to darkness question their entire philosophy. However, Yoda never developed distrust or bitterness that such losses typically create. The Order he'd served for centuries fell in a single night during Order 66. But the true test of Yoda's resistance to darkness happened inside his own mind. Canon detailed Yoda's ultimate internal test at the wellspring of life. The Force priestesses, ancient beings who existed since the Force first divided into light and dark, made him confront truths most beings wouldn't survive knowing. They showed him that the Jedi would fall and that the Sith would rule the galaxy. Then came the worst trial, confronting a shadow version of himself that embodied all his capacity for evil. This wasn't an external army, but part of Yoda himself. Every dark thought he'd ever suppressed, every moment of anger he'd ever felt, every temptation he'd ever resisted, given form and voice. The shadow showed him how his power and wisdom could have made him the ultimate Sith Lord. Most Jedi who face such trials either fall completely or barely survive with sanity intact. By the end, Yoda acknowledged the darkness by speaking to it directly. He accepted its existence, but demonstrated that it could never control him. Yet his greatest test came when he faced Emperor Palpatine for the fate of the galaxy. In the Senate chamber, Yoda deflected Palpatine's Force lightning and fought him to a standstill. The duel ended with neither achieving victory. But what matters is that Yoda maintained perfect balance even as the fate of the entire galaxy was at stake. After the duel, Yoda made a choice that reveals something important about his nature. He retreated. To many Jedi, that might have seemed like failure. Yet Yoda understands a deeper truth. A heroic death would accomplish nothing. The Sith would still rule, and without him, there would be no one to train the next generation of hope. He went into exile on Dagobah, a remote, Force-rich swamp planet. Within its depths lay the Cave of Evil, a site strongly attuned to the dark side. Yoda chose to live nearby, his presence hidden by the cave's dark energy, but untouched by its corruption. For 20 years, he lived there contemplating the failures of the Jedi and preparing for what would come next. He could have spent that time plotting revenge. Instead, he waited for what the Force would provide. When Luke Skywalker finally arrived, Yoda taught him lessons that would only come from 9 centuries of experience. He began not with lightsaber combat or Force techniques, but with philosophy and perspective. His famous teachings about size not mattering and the dark side being quicker and more seductive weren't just advice. They were truths he'd proven across his entire life. He understood that Luke's preconceptions about power would lead him toward darkness just as they had with Anakin. Maybe Yoda's resistance came from wisdom accumulated over centuries. But what would happen if you took someone from Yoda's species who doesn't have that experience and wisdom? Grogu provides a crucial test case. the youngest known member of Yoda's species at 50 years old. He was a student at the Coruscant Jedi Temple who survived Order 66 and was hidden away for many years. He finally appeared during the era of the Mandalorian. Order 66 should have broken him as a child. Grogu watched clone troopers, his protectors since birth, systematically murder his teachers and fellow students. The temple where he learned to walk, where he played and trained, became a slaughterhouse. Like other survivors of the Jedi Purge, Grogu soon learned that hiding was not enough. It was not until the New Republic era that Imperial remnants under Moff Gideon hunted him specifically for blood experiments. They didn't see him as a sentient being, but as a resource to harvest. That level of sustained trauma could have corrupted him just like many surviving Jedi who turned to darkness after Order 66. His feats on the Mandalorian told a different story than expected. When his powers reawakened, he displayed remarkable abilities with the Force. He didn't lash out with rage when faced with a charging mudhorn that threatened Din Djarin. Instead, he lifted the creature carefully, precisely, just long enough for his protector to find an opening. In another instance, he proved that he had compassion for friends and foes alike. When Greef Karga lay dying from poison, Grogu channeled pure energy to save him. This was the same bounty hunter who'd hunted him for profit. Yet Grogu showed no hesitation, no calculation about whether this person deserved help. He simply healed. But Grogu wasn't without struggle. His only moment approaching darkness came during a friendly arm wrestling match between Djarin and Cara Dune. Grogu used a Force choke reflexively out of fear, not malice. This ability is traditionally associated with the dark side. The scene demonstrates he's capable of using aggressive Force abilities when protecting those he cares about. When Ahsoka Tano tested him, she sensed his fear, his anger, and his attachment to Din Djarin. These are precisely the emotions that the Jedi Code warns against, the feelings that traditionally birth Sith Lords. Ahsoka warned Djarin that Grogu would need careful training due to these attachments and emotions. Additionally, she sensed something deeper. Her line about him being a good boy implies she perceived nobility alongside fear. What's notable isn't that Grogu can't feel dark emotions, it's that despite feeling them, despite having every reason to fall, he consistently chooses protection and healing over destruction. At 50 years old, still essentially an infant by his species standards, Grogu has already endured traumas that turned others to the dark side. Canon doesn't claim he's magically immune. In fact, Ahsoka explicitly warns that his fear and attachment are dangerous, the very emotions that lead to the dark side. It shows him struggling with the same temptations as others. The difference lies in how he responds. If trauma couldn't corrupt a child, what about the ultimate betrayal of trust? In canon, around 32 BBY, Yaddle, another member of Yoda's species, experienced such betrayal. This female master, who served on the Council in the final decades of the Republic, uncovered Count Dooku's fall to the dark side before anyone else suspected. She'd known Dooku for centuries. They'd meditated together, trained students together, and debated philosophy together. The betrayal should have felt deeply personal. She faced a choice that had destroyed countless Jedi throughout history: expose the traitor immediately or attempt redemption through compassion. The smart move would have been immediate action. Alert the Council, mobilize the Temple Guard, treat Dooku as the enemy he'd become. The danger was absolute. Dooku had already begun working with Darth Sidious. One wrong move meant death. Most Jedi would have attacked first, seeing only a Sith threat that needed elimination. Instead, Yaddle approached him with genuine compassion. She believed even someone acutely falling could be saved through understanding rather than force. When Dooku murdered her, she died without hatred. Before dying, she warned Dooku, telling him the Council was wrong about certain things, but that his path led nowhere good. This pattern of unwavering loyalty to the light extends even further back into galactic history. In Legends, Vandar Tokar served as a Jedi Master around 4000 BBY during the Mandalorian Wars. He led the Jedi Enclave on Dantooine, appearing prominently in Knights of the Old Republic. When planets burned and young Jedi like Revan and Malak defied Council orders to join the fight, Vandar counseled patience. The pressure to act must have been overwhelming. Every day of delay meant more deaths, more worlds conquered. Republic media painted the Council as cowards. Young Jedi looked at masters like Vandar with barely concealed contempt, seeing his caution as weakness. But Vandar taught patience for a reason. He understood that acting without full information often made things worse. Jedi who rushed into war without caution became vulnerable to the dark side, as seen in the rise of Darth Revan and Darth Malak. In contrast, those who listened to his advice remained on the light side. Around 3951 BBY, Legends sources describe Vandar's death at Katar's conclave when Darth Nihilus arrived. Nihilus was something far worse than a typical Sith Lord. He was a wound in the Force itself, a being of pure hunger that consumed all life on planets. Most beings died instantly when Nihilus fed, their life force ripped away in seconds. According to those accounts, Vandar lasted long enough to help others escape, creating force barriers that bought precious moments. His final thoughts focused on protecting others, maintaining his connection to the light, even as darkness literally consumed him. Around the same era, another member demonstrated something equally remarkable. Master Oteg served as both Jedi Master and Republic Fleet Admiral during the Great Galactic War and subsequent Cold War, around 3643 BBY. He commanded Republic forces against a Sith Empire that showed no mercy. Along with Vandar Tokar, he is one of the few known members of Yoda's species to speak in standard grammar. Unlike Yoda and Yaddle, he doesn't twist words in the distinctive syntax his species is known for. Despite this, his Force sensibilities and unwavering commitment to the light side remained identical. The Sith of that era conducted orbital bombardments that destroyed entire civilian populations. They used biological weapons and terror tactics that violated every treaty and convention. The temptation to respond with equal brutality must have been overwhelming. Oteg's own officers begged him to authorize strikes against Sith civilian targets. They presented compelling arguments. A shorter war would mean fewer total deaths. Matching enemy tactics seemed the only path to victory, and the Sith had started the brutality. Still, Oteg refused to target non-combatants, even when it cost him battles he could have won. He prioritized minimizing casualties over quick victories. For him, the Jedi needed to prove they were better than the Sith. He led by example, never asking his troops to maintain standards he wouldn't uphold himself. This species responds to concentrated darkness. Around 700 BBY, Dark Jedi terrorized the Bafash system, slaughtering innocents across multiple worlds. These weren't military targets, but farming colonies, mining outposts, families who'd never held weapons. Mimch, a young knight of Yoda's species barely past his 100th year, pursued one of these Dark Jedi to a remote planet. His fellow Jedi tried to stop him, believing the pursuit was too dangerous. But Mimch insisted, placing complete faith in the Force to guide him. The planet was Dagobah, the very same location where Yoda would later hide. The battle between Mimch and the Dark Jedi was so intense that it permanently scarred the location. The dark energies released during their duel created what would later become the Cave of Evil that Luke Skywalker entered centuries later. That's the level of corruption Mimch faced, concentrated evil so intense it literally affected the planet itself. According to legends, he was emotionally destabilized and narrowly avoided falling to the dark side. Drawing on light side reserves that seemed beyond what someone so young should possess, he pulled himself back and defeated the Dark Jedi. When the mission ended, he claimed no glory. He simply marked the assignment complete, noted the location's danger, and moved to his next task. This humility after such a victory shows a pattern. They don't boast about resisting darkness. They simply do it and move forward. So what makes them different? While canon and legends never explicitly explain this, we can observe certain patterns in their biology and behavior. The key starts with their developmental timeline. At 50 years old, Grogu was still essentially an infant. Although his mind was developing, his emotional and physical development moved at a completely different pace. Think about what this means for Force development. Human Force sensitivities begin facing moral complexities by age 15. They experience jealousy over peers' achievements, ambition for personal advancement, fear of failure and loss. All these emotions can feed the dark side while they're still learning to channel the Force. Yoda's species spends approximately 50 years in childhood, 5 entire decades, where their developing minds absorb Force energy while experiencing childhood emotions rather than adult corruption. During this time, they sense the Force, feel it flowing through all living things, and even manipulate it instinctively. but they experience emotions through a child's framework. When scared, they seek comfort rather than plotting revenge. When frustrated, they might act out momentarily like Grogu, but it comes from protective instinct rather than hatred. When attached, they love without trying to possess or control. By the time they reach full maturity around 100 years old, they've spent decades with these patterns established. The databank confirms Yoda lived roughly 900 years and trained Jedi for over 8 centuries. This formative period represented only about 5 to 6% of his total life. He spent 50 years building light-side foundations, then over 800 years reinforcing them through experience. Compare this to other species. Humans maybe spend 10 to 15 years in relative innocence, then 60 to 80 years facing temptation. Their formative period represents 15 to 20% of their total life, happening when they're emotionally vulnerable. But extended childhood alone doesn't fully explain their consistency. Their extreme rarity adds another dimension. In both canon and legends, their homeworld and species name remain officially unknown. George Lucas intentionally kept this information secret, and Lucasfilm maintains that mystery to this day. With only a handful of members appearing across thousands of years of galactic history, each one becomes precious beyond measure. This isn't random. It suggests something unique about their origins, though official sources never explain what. Some fans theorize their homeworld might be a light-side nexus, similar to how Korriban radiates darkness, or how Mortis existed as a Force convergence. Beings evolved in such an environment might possess Force energy differently at the cellular level. However, no official canon or legend source confirms this theory. Others suggest they appear when the galaxy needs them most. Tracking their historical appearances shows an interesting pattern. Yoda and Yaddle emerged during the Republic's final centuries, precisely when the Sith were implementing their grand plan. Vandar and Oteg appeared during desperate Sith wars, while Grogu emerged during the New Republic's formation. Each appearance comes when the galaxy faces a crisis of light versus dark. But again, this is observation, not official explanation. Canon and legends simply present the facts without commentary on deeper meaning. What official sources do show is how they process emotions differently than most Force users. When Grogu experiences fear, he seeks safety rather than lashing out. His fear doesn't transform into anger at threats. When attached to his protector, Din Djarin, he chooses love over possession. He wants to be with him, but doesn't try to control him. Even when he does use aggressive Force abilities, like choking Cara Dune, it's momentary and protective. This pattern exists in Yoda as well. After 8 centuries of teaching, he never developed cynicism. He trained thousands of Jedi over his lifetime. Statistically, many died in combat. Hundreds fell to darkness. Some betrayed everything he taught them. Yoda carried the weight of every mistake, every failure, every lost student. Yet each new youngling received the same patience and dedication. Yoda confronted his own capacity for evil directly. The fact that he could acknowledge darkness within himself while maintaining that it would never control him shows remarkable self-awareness. He didn't suppress or deny the darkness. He accepted its existence as part of being alive, then chose light anyway. On Dagobah, surrounded by a concentrated dark-side presence for 20 years, Yoda could have given in to despair. He could have spent that time in anger at the Council's failures. He could have lost faith in the Jedi way after watching everything fall apart. Instead, he maintained hope, knowing the Force would provide another chance. In Legends, Yaddle's sacrifice demonstrated the same pattern of choosing light even unto death. When she confronted Dooku, knowing he'd fallen, she could have attacked immediately out of anger at his betrayal. Instead, she approached with compassion, believing even someone actively falling could be saved through understanding. Vandar showed similar dedication in Legends. Despite pressure from young, aggressive Jedi who saw his caution as weakness, he maintained his position based on wisdom and foresight. Oteg demonstrated it through military command. Although he had the authority to order devastating strikes that might shorten the war, he refused to compromise Jedi principles by targeting civilians. He proved that maintaining honor wasn't weakness, but strength. And young Mimch in Legends showed that even members barely past childhood exhibited this trait. Facing a dark Jedi on Dagobah in a battle so intense it permanently scarred the location, Mimch drew on light side reserves to prevail. Then, he simply reported the mission complete and moved on, claiming no glory. The battle created the cave, but Mimch walked away without corruption. 6 individuals, all facing circumstances that historically create Sith Lords. Yet in every official story, canon or legends, each one maintained their connection to the light. Official sources never explain why this is. The mystery of Yoda's species may never be solved. George Lucas ensured these beings would remain enigmatic. Their homeworld stays classified. Even their species' name remains secret. This might be intentional. In a galaxy that demands explanations for everything, that finds scientific reasons for every phenomenon, Yoda's species reminds us that some wonders should remain wonderful. They are the Force's greatest mystery. What they prove is that unwavering dedication to the light side is possible. They show that wisdom can be accumulated without cynicism, that power can be wielded without corruption, that some beings, through whatever combination of biology, culture, and choice, remain anchored to the light across centuries of temptation. Every member represents a living example of Jedi ideals at their purest. They face darkness, acknowledge it, understand it, and still choose light. Not one shown falling. That's not a coincidence, but rather a pattern worth examining. They prove the Jedi philosophy isn't naive idealism, but an achievable truth. That compassion, patience, and wisdom aren't limitations, but advantages. That the light side, though harder to master and maintain, leads to something genuine and lasting. No official source claims they're biologically incapable of falling. They face the same temptations as others: fear, anger, attachment, loss, betrayal. The difference is in how they respond. This consistency across individuals, eras, and circumstances is what makes them truly powerful. Not just their strength in the Force, though official sources confirm they possess that. Not just their longevity, though living for centuries provides advantages. Not just their wisdom, though experience shapes understanding. What makes them powerful is their example. They demonstrate that the light side isn't a limitation. Choosing compassion over vengeance, patience over aggression, and service over domination doesn't make you weak. It makes you unbreakable. That's the real mystery of Yoda's species. In a galaxy where every other Force-sensitive species has produced both villains and heroes, this one species has produced only Jedi. And perhaps that's exactly how it should remain. A mystery that inspires, rather than a puzzle to be solved. While Yoda's species represents purity of purpose through the Force, other beings captivate the galaxy through entirely different qualities. The Twi'leks possess a beauty and cultural depth that transcends species boundaries, but their charm hides complexities that few understand. Watch next to discover what makes them truly irresistible across the galaxy.